Oh, man. Day 4, COVID lockdown, quarantine. I had to use Joker to wipe my butt today. Completely out of toilet paper. Totally kidding. 100% kidding. But that's kind of the messages that we've been getting from folks, right? Is people are in lockdown. They're going through these dire, just desperate measures and dire situations. It's really wild. And Cece, if you could do me a big favor and share the post with me, I'm going to make sure that I share it with everyone. But it's really such an interesting um, thing that's going on lately. Is this 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 COVID-19 is really forcing us to think about I don't know these what's the word, like these desperate and apocalyptic kind of thoughts. Now, wiping my butt with Joker wouldn't be apocalyptic by any means, but at the same time, these are a really sad and kind of depressing times. So I thought what I would do is have a conversation with everyone tonight about what. I see Cece said she shared it prior to the show, so I'm sharing it with folks. I thought what I would do tonight is kind of talk about the impact that we have with our partners when we have these really important conversations, right? So I'm calling it relationships in crisis. And what I'm really talking about is understanding the big picture, right? Understanding the big picture that we need to really think about, kind of what's going on. And please, I apologize. I'm sharing the video to a couple of folks in different groups. Just thought that might be kind of fun. But let's see. Hold on one sec. Ooh, I can share them all at once. Hold on one sec. Ooh, that's fun. Oh, whoops. Let's see. So, give me one second. So anyway, I thought that would be kind of fun to do. It's kind of have this conversations in crisis. So let me just finish sharing real quick. And there we go. I think we're good. Let's see how many. Cece, I wonder how many groups I've been kicked out of recently. Just gonna see how many that could be. Just because I've been sharing this thing like crazy. But anyway. So I kind of thought that would be the conversation we'd have today, is kind of talking about relationships in crisis, and making sure that we're getting to know each other through the big picture, because I think the big picture is super, super important to kind of talk about. So first of all, I think that it's really important to as we're kind of having this relationship conversation, the amount of changing of opinions has been wild. I mean, I know people who, just a couple of weeks ago were going, this thing's a social media hoax, and it holds no weight, and I don't even know what it is, to, just a couple of days ago, like, I'm scared for my friends and family who's going to die. I am washing my hands religiously. I have self-quarantined myself, all these things. So as we're having this conversation about kind of the big picture and deferring opinions, it's important specifically about this particular conversation. And as it relates to other conversations, as life events happen, our opinions can change, right? By the way, I'm drinking out of my green mug today. I didn't have the opportunity to do anything on St. Patrick's Day because we were kind of like quarantined, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I figured today I would just kind of use my green mug as an homage. I don't know if you knew this. My special human didn't know this, but I'm actually part Irish. I believe I'm 25% Irish. I'm also, you'll note, I'm practically in pajamas tonight. I'm ready to go to bed tonight. I've been feeling a little under the weather. Chill out before you think anything's wrong. It's definitely not COVID symptoms. I'm just a little bit exhausted. No coughing, no itchy eyes, no fever. I've been checking my temperature every day. Just exhausted. I think I've just been working myself to the bone, and my body's a little achy because I haven't been getting enough sleep. But so I'm gonna head to bed after this show, which for me is pretty early. It's only about 8:00 here. So we're having these conversations amidst this COVID crisis, and there's so much self-doubt going on. I mean, I literally don't know day in and day out what my stances are on certain things, because everything's changing with new information, right? There's this big controversial meme that's going around on both sides. If you're accepting that $1,000 check from Donald Trump, make sure you don't hashtag he's not my president. And then on the other side, the Republicans, people are criticizing and saying, well, if you accept that $1,000 check, make sure that you're okay with socialism. And the reality is that new facts are coming to our attention all the time. New things are coming to our attention all the time. Trump himself, I'm not going to get into politics. I am very liberal, so you can deduce what I feel about Trump. Trump himself was thinking this thing was a hoax and was thinking this thing was going to fly over. And now, we're in a national crisis. We're in a national emergency. So what I thought I would do for today's show is, and I want to make sure if you're listening today, we do want to bring guests back on. I didn't bring Mr. Twice in today just because I didn't want to expose anyone to, whatever we might be exposed to. Thought we would take a week off, but we'll be back in the studio together next week. We're definitely a group of 6 or less. But if you're listening and you know of somebody who wants to be a guest on the show, even from afar, we can definitely bring them in. Just kind of wanted to have a chat today with everyone. There are big conversations that this COVID pandemic and this crisis are bringing up amongst households and amongst homes. And I'm finding a couple of things through my own personal relationships, for sure, with everyone, and also through other people's personal relationships, is the level of tension of late is really, really strong. There's a really strong level of tension out there, and we are being less patient with one another when it comes to differing opinions. This country was built on a very huge difference of opinions. And it was because of that difference of opinions that where a lot of us are here, and a lot of folks came here. And we have this big melting pot of folks who have come here at various times and at various situations, with various cultures, various different home lives. So it's very easy to forget that we all come from different places, and our historical our family histories of hundreds and thousands of years shape who we are, and where we've grown up, and the jobs that we have, and the money that we make, and the foods that we eat, and the lifestyles we live, all shape who we are. And at the core, we are all humans, right? But we do have these differing opinions. But I said something super important that I want you to take note of. Behind everything and surrounding everything, right? We are all human beings, and we all share a spirit, and we all share a karma, and we all share this wonderful cosmic energy that makes up our universe. And so I want to talk today about kind of having those big conversations, especially amidst this corona or COVID crisis. Has anybody watched Grey's Anatomy? Because this is what I want to start the conversation with. Look, if you've watched the show, you know that I'm not afraid to talk about sensitive issues. I'm not afraid to talk about the fact that I'm not your typical guy. One of the best things that ever happened to me growing up was my father said to me, he said we were at a baseball game, I think. And he said to me, "You having fun?" I said, "Yeah, I'm having fun." And he said, "How do you feel about next time around going to a Broadway show?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'd like that. I'd like to go to a Broadway show." And so, from that point on, my dad knew I was kind of a different guy. But he's a different guy. He doesn't watch a lot of sports either. He watches mostly golf. He loves going to see shows, and he loves music. And, we used to bond over different types of music. And when I learned that my father liked different types of music, like Led Zeppelin and, all that kind of stuff, I was like, wow, it's pretty cool, So, I've always been a guy who's into the arts. I'll watch the OC. I'll watch Glee. I'll watch it all. I really don't care. But I am a huge fan of Grey's Anatomy. A huge fan. I'm a little sour that most of my favorite characters are gone. I haven't seen season 16. I heard another one of my favorite characters exits. But my McDreamy and my McSteamy are all gone. That kind of stuff. But so I'm watching season 15 because I wanted to get up to season 16. And I'm watching one of the episodes where Meredith Grey, if you don't watch the show, Grey's Anatomy, it's actually a double entendre, right? Grey's Anatomy is the title of a book, a very famous anatomical book for the medical world. But Grey, Meredith Grey, is the main character, and it's Grey's Anatomy. So Meredith Grey is the main character. And her husband, McDreamy, I could give you a spoiler here because it happened seasons ago, but Patrick Dempsey's character has died. And I mean, it was, I think they met in the first episode of the damn show. I mean, without a doubt, first episode of the show. So Meredith is trying to date. And, she goes on one date and she's, oh man, this is going to suck and I don't want to do this. And she's trying to tell whoever to bail her out and how quickly can I get out of this thing. And she went to go on a date with, I forget the guy's name because it's just the one date. It's the guy who plays Ted Mosby in How I Met Your Mother, right? We know that character. Now, I take it as a compliment. Some people say I've got like a Ted Mosby kind of character. And I don't know if that's an insult or not. I take it as a compliment. I mean, that Ted Mosby in that show is brilliant. He's in good shape. Doesn't he rollerblade to class? I feel like, right? I wish I could do that. I can't do that. He's intelligent. He's sensitive. He's witty. He's funny. I think he dresses damn well. Just throw that dude in a sweater vest, and he is just spot on. So Ted Mosby's the guy who plays Ted Mosby, the actor, is on a date with Meredith Grey. This guy's a good-looking dude. He grew a beard in for this role, and I think he's got a sweater vest on. So just staying true to form, not really getting too far away from his character there. And they're on a date, and they're just hitting it off. Now they start the date off with they were bonding over when you're on a good date, and this is something cool we can bring up. And this is the big picture kind of thing. When you're on a good date and everything's going great and they're hot and they're whatever and you're loving it and you're enjoying everything and you're vibing, and then they say the one thing. The one thing. Now the one thing is different for everybody, right? It's like City Slickers. Curly used to say the one thing, right? The one thing's different for everybody, but it's the one thing that could ruin the date for you. Like it could be something like if you're not a Trump fan and somebody's like, oh man, we're making America great again, right? And all of a sudden you're like, damn it, that's it. Or it could be something like, you're going out with someone you think they're great, and then all of a sudden they use a racial slur, right? And you're like, well, that's it, right? Or they say something like, dogs don't deserve our attention anyway. They're just, they're less than human, right? And all of a sudden you're like, well, I'm a dog lover, right? So they go through this whole date, and everything's great. In fact, they found out during the date, and she was trying to get out of it to begin with, right? They find out during the date that they weren't even supposed to be on the date together. Their dates were at the bar. It was like a often dating app, and they didn't check each other's pictures first, which let's suspense reality for a second. But their dates were at the bar, and it was kind of funny that they went up on the date, and they actually had to wind up with this dating thing, texting each other and saying, hey, they texted their other dates like, oh, I'm sorry it didn't work out, blah, blah, blah. And they saw across the bar the two dates looked at their phone and kind of ignored the text message, So they're not even supposed to be on this date together. Everything's going great. And they're walking. She calls a couple of people at work. She extends her break at work. And then she winds up, they're walking after lunch. And I'm suspecting she made it a lunch date because she wanted to get out of it quickly, right? But she extended it because it was so enjoyable, right? And I'm sorry for those folks. Kristen, if you haven't seen that episode, I do apologize. It was a couple of seasons ago, so I very much apologize. But they are walking around and they're venting. They're venting about X, Y, and Z. And all of a sudden, she goes, blah, 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 and he goes, yeah, and blah, 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 and they're going back and forth. And then he says to her, oh, Those single parents, I can't stand them. They're so desperate on the first date to find somebody who's going to just be their everything. And, it's like on their first date, they have to be married and blah, 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 and the father of their children, da, 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 da. And she gets quiet, and he goes, that was the one thing, wasn't it? And she goes, I've got 3 kids. And while I'm not desperate to find somebody right away who's going to be the father of my children, it's very important to me that somebody be okay with that. And I think I just watched the episode. It was the second time I watched it because I watched a few episodes prior. I think he said something like I think he tried to rectify it, and she was like, that's it. It's the one thing. It's the one thing that you can't come back from, And they had already said it in the date. They said in the beginning of the date that there's one thing that's going to be said during a date sometimes that you can't come back from, and that was the one thing. And so this kind of prompted this conversation that I've been thinking about for the past really couple of weeks as the COVID thing has really come to a head. The big conversations that we need to be having should be had early on. Now, I know when you're in the honeymoon phase, everything's wonderful and it's lovely. And yeah, Lauren, I totally get that. You have a child, right? Everything's lovely and wonderful, and you're just, you're trying to keep everything as flush as possible, right? As beautiful and as charming and butterflies and rainbows, and everything's supposed to be grand. And that's great. And the honeymoon period should be as much like that as possible. But the honeymoon period, or whenever you're dating someone, the earlier you can have the bigger, the better. Now, we've talked about this in very many forms throughout the show as the show has kind of evolved, right? We've talked about the fact that we are dating online, and you don't put whether you want kids typically on your dating profile. You don't put if you're Republican or Democratic. You don't put if you have a DNR, do not resuscitate, on your dating profile. You don't put these things on there, right? And at the same time, we have made humans so expendable that when somebody disagrees with the big thing, we just go, get out of there, right? It's fine. Just swipe left on them. I guess that's cool in the beginning, right? But what happens when you've invested 1, 2, 3 years with someone and you disagree on some big things? This happened to me in my marriage, and I'm okay talking about it. We disagreed on children. At the time, I didn't want children. She did. I came to realize that it was just one of the few things that made me uncomfortable about our relationship at the time, and I could have expressed that to her, and I think we might have been able to even talk through that and maybe get through that, but she wanted children. There was no way around it, and I, at that time, did not want children. And so that was not something that we discussed, when we were in college. We weren't playing beer pong like, Sink, by the way, do you want kids? Because I don't know about the whole kids thing, right? This was something we should have had a conversation about much earlier on. And, we need to talk about how to handle those conversations and the way those conversations need to be handled. So, Cece, we're about at the 20-minute mark. We're at the 19-minute mark. So what I'd like to do is just take a quick 10 to 15 second break for our sponsors. This is something that we do for WGSN-DB Going Solo Radio. This is The Barbershop. I am your host, Christopher Salute. If you caught me early on, I started it on by saying we're in crisis mode. I'm day 4 of quarantine. I had to wipe my butt with Joker because I'm running out of toilet paper. None of that is true. Charmin, if you're listening though, we would love to have you as our sponsor. So you get on over here and pay us a couple $100 and we'll be happy to promote your specific brand. I think I'm more of a Scott guy. Anyway, let's take a 15-second break. It's going to be awkward for you. I'm literally going to be staring at the screen for the next 10 to 15 seconds. All the love in the world for you. I got new glasses. Take a look. I had to clear my throat the entire time. That's like the worst time to need to clear your throat. We are back with WGSN-DB Going Solo Radio. I am your host, Dr. Christopher Salute. We are here on The Barbershop. This is the #1 internet singles talk network. And if you're just joining us after the break, after our sponsors have come in, yes, Melissa, it is a big thing. We are talking about big conversations amidst the COVID crisis, discussing the big issues. Now, I want to discuss a couple of things. It's really interesting that, we're talking about these different kinds of conversations amidst, the crisis, because I want to make sure that, we talk about the ways in which we want to have these conversations. So if anybody, has listened to a few of my shows before, you've heard that I have a special human in my life, and we've been on and off, and, we hopefully are back on for good. You never know. I just hope that this is what, she wants for sure. People ask me how we're doing, that, how's everything going? And I will answer it with, we do two things really well above everything. One of them we have to be in the same room for. The other one we don't. We could do it anywhere in the world, on the phone, via text, Skype. We can do it wherever we want to do it, and it's fighting. And so we do it really well. We're both really good at it. And, we had a couple of conversations as the COVID pandemic started to hit. And, these were two kind of big conversations that I thought were good conversations to have. The first was, I had asked her, she was here for maybe no more than 26 hours. And I had asked her, I said, hey, do you want to go out to eat? The bars and restaurants are probably going to be shut down pretty quick. This might be one of the last times I'd like to take you on date night. I wanted to take her on multiple date nights. We had plans to see each other a couple weeks from now. And unfortunately, with everything going on, we just couldn't. I said, love, let me take you on date night. And she responded with, I really don't feel comfortable with that. I really feel like we need to stay in. Now, this is, and I'm going to bring you another one too. This is a conversation that you want to have. Amidst a crisis like this, you want to be able to have that conversation. Are we going out? Are we taking this seriously, or are we not? Now, at the time, I'm still taking it seriously, right? My reasonable way of thinking was, look, whatever restaurant we go to is going to have a maximum of like 8 people in the damn building at most, right? The food is probably not going to, it's not going to be contaminated because it's probably from last week's shipment, and it's going to be fried and heated and whatever. We're going to be fine, right? Now, that's a conversation that I could have had with her, and I could have urged her to come out to dinner with me and said, look, we're going to go out to dinner. This is what I want to do, and let's have this conversation, right? And I think that reasonably I could have had that conversation, right? Could have definitely had that conversation with her. It was my decision at that time, because of the pandemic and because we both live with anxiety, to say, love, I hear you. Let's stay in. We went to Cane's Chicken. We went to Freddy's Shake Shack Burger, Freddy's Steak Burgers. We got a smorgasbord of food. We watched one of her favorite movies, which I still have to finish, and that was it. And that was wonderful, and it was a great date night. I was able to wear my sweatpants, right? That is the kind of conversation that it's a big issue kind of a thing, right? Are you taking COVID seriously, or are you not? And at the time, I think we had different levels of how seriously we were taking it, right? In that particular moment, it came to fruition. It came out in a conversation about whether we're going to dinner or not. When you're in, I don't care if it's a budding relationship, if it's been a relationship that you've been in for 25 years, you have to make the decision. Is this a conversation? Is this a debate? Is this an argument that I need to have with my partner? Do I need to stand up in this moment and say this thing right now? Did I care if we went and got all-you-can-eat sushi, or did I care if we got a burger from Freddy's Steak Burgers and brought it home? Didn't care. Didn't care, made her happy. End of story, end of conversation. Now, the underlying conversation is, how seriously are you taking COVID, right? And at that moment, The Strip hadn't been shut down yet. I firmly believe that as seriously as we need to take COVID, hear me out, as seriously as we need to take COVID, COVID is not the problem. We are the problem. We are not staying inside. We are gathering in groups of people with 300, we're 300 or more people or whatever. We're using this opportunity with our kids out of school to take them places, to interact with each other. Are you out of your minds, right? And we're treating each other like complete trash. We're buying toilet paper and hand sanitizer, and we're stepping on people in grocery stores. The pandemic is not the virus. The pandemic is how terrible of human beings we are, okay? So at that moment, I felt it was safe to go out and get all you can eat sushi or whatever it was that we were going to get. And that was my stance. Did I stand up for it? No. There's no need. There's no need to have that conversation in that moment because someone you love feels strongly about something else. Now, around that same time, we'd had a conversation, and I said, I think it might be time for me to get a gun. It might be time for me to get a firearm because I don't know if people are going to be looting houses. Now, I've never owned a gun before. I've shot a gun. And my special human said, I agree with you. I agree with you. And, my family has guns and things of that nature. Now, usually as liberal of a person as I am, we typically don't believe in having firearms. I do believe in having a firearm. I think it's okay in the home. I think it's, if you ever have to use it in your lifetime, God forbid, it should be the one time ever that you've ever had to use it in 10 lifetimes. But if you do, it was probably necessary to use it, right? Somebody else probably had a gun, right? That might be controversial, and feel free to step to me and yell at me, and I'll take it because that's my stance. Now, this person that that I had this conversation with, my special human, she said, I agree with you. What if she said, I don't agree with you? What if she said, I will not live in a home that has a firearm? Well, we've invested X amount of years in each other. That could be a major problem, right? Now, it wasn't, right? But that's the kind of conversation you want to have as early on as you can, because you need to be able to get through it. Now, can you get through it? Yes. As I mentioned, I am so truly sorry for the generation that I live in and the generation below us, because we have made folks super expendable. Once you have found your soulmate, and I have a good friend who always talks to me about soulmates, and we both believe that you can have multiple soulmates, but there's the one soulmate that you really want to make it work with, right? There's the one that you truly, and soulmates, I'll tell you right now, I think my buddy Dave, my best friend Dave in the whole world, I think he's one of my soulmates, 100%. Dude's not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. We are attached at the heart, right? So I don't even think that a soulmate has to be your significant other. And who knows, right? It could be anybody. And with the way that our genders are fluid, our sexualities are fluid. I mean, a soulmate can be so many different things to so many different people. They can encompass so much of you, and really, their karma and your karma can truly match. When you have that soulmate, right? When you have that person that you are enthralled with, that you're attached to, that your karmas match up with each other. Now, you could be toxic soulmates, right? We've talked about that as well. But the point that I'm making is that when you've got somebody that's that important to you, you've got to make a decision, right? You've got to make a decision about whether or not the conversation you're about to have is going to end you or it's going to enhance you, right? Now, me and this person who had this conversation, my special human who I love dearly, she could have not been a gun person. I could have not been a gun person. Is that going to end the relationship? Well, there's a couple of factors, right? The first is it that important to you to seek someone else? And if you line up in enough ways with someone, there really shouldn't be too many things that would end that relationship, right? Now, if there's abuse happening, if it's, you know, if you're super uncomfortable in that relationship for a significant period of time, yes, you end the relationship. But for something that is political, for something that could be religious, for something that could be solved with a debate and a conversation, and maybe even a difference of opinions, I don't know that you end the relationship. I think that you have the conversation and you see where the conversation goes. Now, here's the thing. How are we having these conversations? When are we having these conversations, right? Those are two super important questions to ask ourselves. Do we have these conversations amidst a pandemic that is going to absolutely, if it has not already, shape the very essence of multiple generations? Is now the time to have that conversation? I don't think that it is. I don't. I think if it's a pressing matter, I think if somebody comes home with a gun and you do not believe in guns, then yes, you have that conversation, right? If you believe in vaccines and your partner does not, and you are amidst the COVID crisis, you got to have that conversation. But I would have hoped that you would have had this conversation months or years prior, right? Now, some of us may be in a situation where we just met somebody and now we're just kind of shacked up with them because it's, you know, it's quarantine time. You know, you got your Tinder match and then all of a sudden, you know, midnight happens and you're quarantined for the next 3 weeks. I say good luck to you. I say absolutely good luck to you. Hope that you have enough TV watching to keep your eyes forward. But for the rest of us, if you've got a relationship and you've got a soulmate that you're investing your time with, right? These are conversations I think that should have been had prior. Now, if they couldn't have been had prior, right? And if they're not relevant right now, in this moment, perhaps they can be had later. For example, child rearing, right? Having children. Look, unless we are we may be conceiving a child right now, given everyone being inside right now, but unless we are having that child today or conceiving it right now, just use protection for the next couple of weeks, yeah? But unless you're conceiving that child right now, there's no need to have that conversation at this moment. Religion can kind of go either way. A lot of people are getting to be are bringing their faith along on this journey with COVID. I certainly have turned to my faith, as I always do, right? But these are conversations that may not need to happen amidst the COVID crisis. And I'll tell you why. We are all, so I don't care who you are, we are all on high alert right now. We are all high tension, right? Now, I suffer from very high anxiety. I suffer from pretty deep depression, okay? The world pretty much ends for me once a week, okay? Let's be honest. The world pretty much ends for me once a week. And I feel like I'm losing my job pretty much every day. And I feel like I'm losing the people who I love at least 2 to 3 times a month, okay? My staff, my friends, my family, my loved ones, my significant other. I feel like I'm pretty much a conversation away from being alone every single month. So to me, this tension is fine, right? However, that's not everybody. And let's be realistic, right? You put a bunch of people in these rooms, in these conversations, while you're having these really, really intense feelings about what's going on. I mean, who knows if we're getting a check for $1,000? Who knows if we're getting laid off for 18 months? Who knows if our houses are going to be, you know, if we're getting mortgage suspensions and rent suspensions? Who knows if we're going to be on the streets? Are we tying bandanas around our heads and getting MK-47s and robbing people for toilet paper? We don't know what's going on. We have no idea what's going on. And that uncertainty creates such a high level of tension, right? So, unless you have to have that conversation, I don't know that it's the right time to have that conversation, which brings me to the next point. The 2 points were when you're having the conversation and how you're having the conversation. Now, if you want to discard your special human, if you want to discard a soulmate, go right ahead, right? You have this conversation however you want, right? If that's the one thing for you and you feel there's no way around it, have the conversation however you want, because it doesn't matter to you how it's perceived. You're ending it, right? But if you care about the special human on the other end of this conversation, it does behoove you to really be careful about the words that you're about to choose. Now, again, I'm hoping we don't even have these conversations amidst this pandemic, but let's say we're having them at another time, whether it be children, whether it be how to talk to one another, whether it be religion, whether it be keeping a gun in the home. Who we're voting for is probably not even that important. Although of late, I think it holds more weight than usually. Education, homeschooling, pets. I can't think of anything, but there are so many other, vaccines, right? So many other valuable things that we need to have conversations about, right? The how is going to be super important. Right? The how is very, very, very important. So when I am talking to my special human, I try to make sure that I'm super cognizant and understanding of what they're saying, right? As well as choosing my words very carefully, right? And I think that she does the same. But there are folks who just can't do that. And there are folks who just have a really hard time not being stubborn and obnoxious. And so this is a challenge for us, right? If you're having this conversation, whether it's early on in the relationship or later on in the relationship, if you have any hope to save that relationship or to salvage it, how you say the next couple of things are going to be super important, right? Really important to be aware of what you're saying and how you're saying it. For example, if you're talking about childbirth, right? And you know that, so something that's been super prevalent in my relationships, I have always dated plus size women. Always, 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 always. Now, there are a multitude of birth complications that can be prevalent for a plus size woman that may not be for a straight size woman, right? There's things that happen and vice versa, right? And as I'm getting older, right, there are fewer and fewer women who want to risk, a pregnancy that could hurt their body, hurt their child, those types of things. Now, I can have this conversation on a first date. I can have this conversation on a 150th date. But if I come out and I say, well, can't wait to, whatever, put some babies in you, there's absolutely no way that conversation is going to go well. Just not going to happen. Okay, not with somebody who has been told all their lives that they may have an issue having a child because they're plus size, and doctors don't care. They will say that until they're blue in the face, and it may not even be true, but they've heard it, right? And number two, to somebody who is getting a bit older, as I am, and just may not be ready to just commit to that right away, right? So I may want to say something like, and again, you have to decide how much you're compromising, right? I may want to say something like, giving back to a young child is important to me. Ideally, I would like to create a child biologically. If I can't, I'm open to adoption. I'm also open to a career, which I have in education, that allows me to work with children every day. And if I can't do one of those things, I think that fostering would be great, or going to various charities and working with young children, right? That leaves the door open for a lot of rebuttals and a lot of volleys back from my special human to say, okay, well, I'm glad that you've got these 5 or 6 different ideas in your head. I'm hearing that giving to a child by some means is important to you. What is important to me is that, and I'm not speaking for my special human right now. I'm just speaking as if she were an imaginary person. What's important to me is that I don't put myself in harm's way or a child at risk. So when we're ready to have that conversation, I'd like to look into the biological factors, but I'd also like you to be open to the fact that we might want to adopt or foster a child. And that's a great way to have that conversation, right? It starts with a clear understanding of knowing that your first words in a conversation could very, very much dictate the rest of the conversation. And that dictation could very, very much end the relationship or push that person away only because of how expendable we have become. And it's sad, right? once you've deduced those two things, these words could really hurt this person. These words could dictate the rest of the relationship and push this relationship into a place where I don't want it to go due to this conversation. You will be much more careful about the word choices that you're going to use. Now, the other thing that you need to think about before having a big conversation, a big discussion like this, as discussed in my notes, is this conversation something I'm flexible on? Is this conversation something I can budge on? What's up, Mary Sue? How are you? And so, and I did not say hello. I didn't say hi to Kristen. I didn't say hi to Lauren. I'm not going to call out who my special human is. My special human actually has joined the conversation and has been for quite some time, but I'm not going to. I don't want her to feel uncomfortable. But the point of making sure that you're not hurting this person is to really to understand yourself and to understand what you're able to budge on and what you're able to be okay with and not be okay with. Now, I had an ex-wife who was a really smart woman, and her father was pretty smart as well. And they shared a pretty similar demeanor in that they let most things slide. They let 99% of what they were thinking about go, right? You want chicken for dinner? I want beef. Honey, chicken it is. You want to watch the Cowboy game? I want to watch Broadway. Cowboys it is, right? What they did was they saved up their capital. They saved up their capital for the big ones, for the big conversations, okay? When you said something like, I want to go on vacation, it's going to cost $5,000, they might come back with, I've been thinking about vacation all year. This is where I want to go, right? Maybe it might not even be something that trivial. It might be more something like naming your child, right? Or where to live, right? That's where they got heavy on their hand, and I thought that was a great strategy, right? I thought it was a great strategy in life to live knowing that you can let 99% of the things go, right? That one thing that you're really focused on, you're gonna stand up for, right? You're gonna really stand up for, and it's something that I've tried to bring into my life. I can't think of the word, but sometimes you just get a little, no, this is a big conversation I want to have, right? This is important, and I want to have it. But when that happens, we really need to urge ourselves and urge our partner, understanding that you could go at any time, right? And I don't mean go in life like, well, I could, right? I mean, especially with COVID going on, that my heart is not as great as it should be. But understanding that you can leave the conversation at any point, right? You can leave the conversation and leave the relationship whenever you want. We are unfortunately expendable, right? You need to decide when you're having these big conversations, whether it be how serious are we taking COVID versus do I get a gun versus how many kids are we having versus are we having children, right? These are conversations that, unless brought up delicately and continued in a way that embraces your partner's feelings and helps them to understand that you are not their adversary, that you and them are getting there together, right? You may have a big issue on your hand, because now the issue is not we disagree. The issue is you don't give a crap enough about me to broach it in a way that shows me that you're in this for the long run. You have broached it in a way that shows me that I'm expendable, that shows me that you're ready to leave. And let me tell you something. I would say 99 times out of 100, the arguments that I've had, the debates that I've had, I was less concerned about your stance and more concerned about your delivery, right? If your delivery shows me that I am not valued to you as a human being, I don't care what your stance is, right? And I would imagine that some of my partners have felt the same way. So I did say today was going to be a short show. I think I'm hitting my 45-minute point. I am sick, certainly not with COVID, but with something. I have a headache and I'm exhausted. Today's show was about having big conversations amidst this pandemic, amidst this crisis, and making sure that your partner, should you have a partner, understands A, when to have these big conversations, B, how to have these big conversations, and C, that your delivery of your stance is much more valuable and much more important than your stance itself. We as expendable humans in this godforsaken millennial dating world need to be reminded just a little bit here and there, if not more so, especially during a pandemic where our anxieties are out the door through the roofs. We do need to be reminded that we are loved. We need to be reminded that we are valued. We need to be reminded that our stance and what we want to stand for is important, and is as important as we are as humans. So I hope, as long as this COVID pandemic keeps us indoors and keeps us on top of one another, I hope that we can remember that as many things that keep us separate, right, whether it be culture, hundreds and thousands of years of families, differences in families, where we grew up, what we grew up with, how much money we make, what we do for a living. At the root of all these things, right, we are the same spirit. We own that same karma that flows within all of us, and it really is such a binding factor that keeps us human and keeps us together. So if you can get back to that, and at any given point, remember that we all want to feel loved, and we all want to feel embraced, and we all need to be coddled just a little bit during such a terrible, crazy, rough, uncertain time. I think if you can get back to that, then having those difficult conversations should be a little bit easier. Doesn't make it too much easier, because having difficult conversations when we disagree certainly is not that easy. But just wanted to leave you with that for sure. I need to get myself to bed. I need to hydrate and get some Advil so I can get rid of this headache. But I hope you guys enjoyed the WGSN-DB Going Solo Network Radio. I am your host, Dr. Christopher Salute, with The Barbershop. Please be kind to everybody during this pandemic. Please be kind to your partner. Save the conversations that don't need to be had during this tense time for another time, when we can go to a ball game, or we can go to a restaurant, or we can go grocery shopping and get some toilet paper and throw it all around. Save those tough conversations. But if you have to have a tough conversation, if it's relevant right now, if it's necessary to have right now, I would urge you to have it in a way that makes your partner understand and helps your partner understand you are valued, you are loved, I'm not going anywhere, you are not an expendable human, I am not swiping left, I've swiped right on you indefinitely, we are soulmates, we share karma, and although our karma would sometimes make us toxic or make us not agree or make us not good for one another, at this moment, we are the best things for each other, and I value and love you. So with that, I hope you guys had a great time on my show. Thanks so much. Everyone interacted really well today. I'm sorry if I spoiled Grey's Anatomy for a couple people, but in my defense, it was a couple of seasons ago. So you guys are all great. This is WGSN-DB Going Solo Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Salute, with The Barbershop. Next week, you should have Mr. Twice on, talking about thinking it twice. Be well, guys. Stay safe, and be bold.